Okay, so on Fright Chat Friday this week, we're going to take a look at Fatih Demir and Zak Espi from the 2012 World Cup final in the plus 80 division. So this was one of the last tournaments that the old weights were minus and plus 80. So this is a very exciting fight at the time. Both of these guys were kind of feared on the scene, I guess, and real big heavyweights. So it was a great fight, very exciting, and everybody was excited to watch this one. And it was a back and forth, and very, very good one to watch and be in the crowd for. And it was an exciting ITF fight. So yeah, it'll be good to showcase this and have a chat through.
it brings me back to that kind of that time in Brighton. I didn't even see the fight live as it happened. I was with Louise preparing for the 58 kilo final where she was up against Agnieszka. So we were in the warm-up room off to the side, and you could hear the crowd, but you couldn't actually see the fight in any way, shape or form. So I don't know if I'd watched it until, you know, it was flagged for us and we decided we'd go back and have a look at it like this. But yeah, the atmosphere was really fantastic there, wasn't it?
No, it was a good one. I was back and forth as well, wasn't it? And it was kind of like, it was one for the entertainment of the fans. Really, it was big hits and back and forth and a bit of drama in there as well. So yeah, I think everybody enjoyed it. Plenty
of big hands being thrown, so it was good. So definitely. We jump into looking at a few of the little details. So we might just start at the very start of the match there, where I suppose, we see Fatih stepping through Zak's front leg here a couple of times in a row, just straight in, and getting not so much momentum because he's meeting him in the middle, but he is reading that body position and the foot-to-foot movement right away.
And yeah, he really tends to either go directly through, or usually he'll just come off the kick a little bit and fall into that empty space and pick the perfect time to attack with his hands, but he decides to go directly through here, and I think that's basically due to Zak's stance having that more closer to full facing stance, I guess, so Zak can punch a little bit better, but that allows Fatih to go right through the middle.
Yeah, I think when you look at his position as well as he goes into the punches, like, he's very well extended. He particularly on the second one, he's getting a good lean, so he is really committing to meeting Zak in the middle on it. And you'd have to wonder, the fact that he was committing to that straight away, right from the very first go, was the plan in place already? Was it expected?
Yeah, you'd wonder, and like you can see that it's kind of, as you said, he's almost has his mind made up here from the start that he's just going to go right through. And maybe he's picked up that Zak maybe has a little step of foot to foot here, maybe, or something like that. So yeah.
But we can see like a little bit of a contrast then in terms of, Zak staying quite tall here as Fatih comes in with the punches. That it really is to his advantage. Like, he keeps the eyes open, he keeps focused on the target, it keeps his punches accurate. And you can see him getting a little bit of an advantage out of that then as he's managed to turn Fatih and gain ring position.
Yeah, and the adjustment was made there almost instantly by Zak, fair play, because he went a little bit more side facing straight away, and you can see that kind of paid off. He was able to, I don't know that head kick land or was it scored, but at least he made that adjustment to put Fatih off anyway, and it was harder for him to counter. So obviously it's harder to make a direct counter with your hands if the kick is high, so he made that adjustment really well.
That's it. I mean, it didn't phase him anyway. Yeah. Something we kind of see, and it's an early version of the blitz that we see from Fatih. We kind of see two versions of it, and in one version he's quite low, drops the head, he comes forward, and sometimes it means he's kind of punching into the chest or into the body. But he also has that kind of Superman punch version. So like you have the grounded one here immediately with the little hop into the Superman one, but the distance he gets is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, massive. And you can see there, as you said earlier, he kind of almost has his mind made up once the referee says, see Jack, he's off and he's ready to go. But as you said, he clears massive distance there. His arms are almost at full length, and that lovely distance control that he has sets up the high kick very nice. And I was actually impressed here that usually if somebody would throw that high kick, they would almost settle on it, but he goes directly back in again.
There's a flow to it.
Definitely, yeah, and it kind of goes back to the whole idea of momentum, and I think that this plays out a lot in this fight. Once he gets a kind of a head start on you and a bit of a run, it's very, very difficult to stop him. And we know that Zak's style is almost that same kind of grinding, kind of like pressure style, building momentum on you. And I think Fatih, once he got the start first, that was him, and it's very difficult to stop him.
And it's an interesting mirror match as well, because they both tend to prefer the left leg in front, and they both tend to prefer finishing with that high kick, so that high turning kick off the left leg. So we do get to see this going over and back, and I suppose that kind of jumps us into that kind of, that exchange of momentum we see from the guys from time to time in this fight, where, if they can get that backward pressure at all, it is opening up that front leg. And, on that occasion it worked out for Zak, but straight from the off, we have that little bit of pressure again from Fatih, and and when that pressure is on, you're getting that ring position, you're getting that ring space, and I think particularly when the guys they're big guys, like that extra space in the ring matters.
Definitely, yeah. Once you get any momentum at all, it's maybe 2 or 3 steps, and you're right on the edge again. But as we can see there in that little sequence as well, just kind of like how we mentioned earlier, Zak is after making that adjustment, and he's kind of starting off more side facing, so the distance is now extended here, so it's harder. And then Fatih almost gets trapped kind of in no man's land for a second, fully kind of like facing sideways. So that's kind of a theme that's kind of popped up a little bit on these breakdowns, that when you're side facing, you get caught very easily, and Zak takes advantage of that fully, and it's Zak's style to kind of get that extra continuation score and to keep going there, really, isn't it?
It really is, and I mean, it's one that it's the first time we've really caught Fatih flat-footed. He's usually going forward, so he's closing the distance. He's taking the power out of the incoming shot simply because he's closed the distance there. You can't kick as strong because the leg isn't fully extending. And even in terms of the punches are typically going backwards from Zak, or on the turn, as he kind of finds himself, taller, but trying to keep his ring position. So when in this case he's just been caught standing, that kick is landing with full effect. It's going to be pretty powerful. You can kind of see occasions. So this was a little later into it. This is kind of about 2 minutes into the video. The first real body kicks landing, from Zak, and I think these are the kind of exchanges that he's getting the value from. Like, he's getting scores out of these exchanges, where what's happening is he's staying taller. The punches are happening, and between both fighters. But Zak is staying that little bit taller. His punches tend to be more towards the head, and where Fatih's hands are hitting into the chest and into the body a little bit more. And you'd have to imagine that from a referee's point of view, scoring these punches, they're going to just see the ones where you're seeing that red glove on that blue helmet, and it's clearer than the blue glove hitting into the body. And and I think there's been a couple of exchanges like that throughout the fight where if you're scoring it, it might come out 2-1 Zak.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. It comes back to Zak being just so tall, and he's actually not a tall guy. He's maybe like 5'11", 6 foot max, I think.
But calling him out there.
But he's well able to get really tall, even against when he's fighting guys in the plus 85 division, and they're much taller than him, 6'2", 6'3". He's still able to get really tall there and get those punches so clear, and it's one of certainly one of his trademark kind of techniques, I guess, if you want to call it that. But his body position is so tall and upright that he's able to get the punches so clear.
Yeah, and I do wonder if it's something, because I've often said this about Zak. Zak comes out of his fights and coming through 4 and 5 rounds in a tournament. He's still way too pretty by the end of that. Like, fighting all those big guys, he should be getting some lumps in the face, and he tends to come out looking like he did when he went in. And you are getting hit. And so unless he's got some special genetic, like adamantium skin or something like that, I think it's just more likely that he is putting himself in that position where he's a little taller, a bit more accurate. He's staying over the punches are hitting the chin and down, or I think you can see it here against Fatih, who's well able to bring the hands to bear, but he's not getting as many accurate punches on the chin, in and around the eyes, that you would expect to see. And coming out of that, Zak's coming out of the match a little less bashed up, I think that's a big help for him.
Yeah, and Fatih usually kind of lunges with his punches as well, and he as we said, he's trying to build that momentum, where Zak is just happy to put a glove on your head, really, to be honest. It doesn't really matter to him. Yeah,
absolutely. So we kind of jump into the second round, and for me, I thought this was very, very interesting in terms of the evolution of that style. So we can see the different distances that have been involved, and where we've got the Superman punch that kind of misses here at the beginning, and the distance is wrong. Just here, yeah.
And I think that's actually because of Zak's adjustment again to that side-facing stance. sometimes he's side facing like here, and then he goes naturally back to full facing to punch better. And I think that adjustment is actually putting Fatty off at times because he doesn't know what distance to judge from. Is he going to go from that long distance, or is Zak in a shorter stance with a taller body position?
Yeah. And then maybe as the fight's gone on, this is Zak's adjustment. His adjustment has tended to be not to make an angle off of the punches, the Superman or the Blitz, whatever we want to call it there, but to just go taller. So he's absorbing it into the body, going taller, and trying to be that bit more accurate with the hands.
And I guess if you look at some of like Master Barada's students as well, that's how they tend to counter a blitz, usually with like a jumping punch on the retreat, and it's kind of a similar kind of technique here. We'll see it as it rolls on, but he just stays tall and tries to stay above him. You see it here now.
Oops, my bad. So we'll catch that one again. But I think, as you said, he stays tall and stays above it. But what it does as well is, the stretch comes in. You run out of momentum going forward.
Yeah. I see it right here now. It's almost kind of like he's just missing. All he's missing is the jump. But it's a very similar technique to what you see from a lot of those guys in Slovenia, how they counter a blitz generally.
And it is that thing, like you commit to the blitz, you've only got so much forward momentum unless you connect. So if the person is moving back or jumping back, they're landing almost into that forward motion. They're going to make that contact in the air. They're going to land. They're going to go immediately into forward motion. So they will either just clash with you, or if the punch, if you really run out of momentum, then when they land, they're carrying their own momentum forward. So it is, an interesting little adjustment where, I suppose we might look at it as maybe a defensive stop side kick, a counter back kick, or a step off the line is maybe a more common thing to try right now against the blitz. But being just that option of going tall, taking a little bit of space, making sure the front hand doesn't hit you the first hand, and stepping in almost in the space between the first and second hand is effective for him there.
And as you said as well, you can't give Fatty that momentum. If you leave him get that momentum, especially as he's coming forward in that position in the ring, almost on the corner, then he's going to win that exchange all the time, so you can't really leave him get that head start on you. Yeah,
you're flowing straight back out of it. So there was a big moment here in the second round. So we're kind of about 4 minutes 20 into the video, I think. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think when we see it playing through here again, Zak again on that side facing stance, Fatty comes through the space, but pure Zak style goes after it and gets that continuation like we talked about. But you can see there the referee's hand comes in early, so I imagine the referee called Hecho. Fatty heard it for the exit, so he exits the ring. Hecho, you see the referee, and then the kick comes. So I don't know, was he maybe playing that and hoping to get maybe a minus point on Zak's side, which I think actually happened. And I don't think anybody actually scored that head kick, although it was great and there was a big ooh ah from the crowd. I don't think it actually made a massive difference in the match in terms of giving Zak any advantage. If anything, maybe a psychological confidence boost, but I think he ended up with a minus point for it.
Yeah, I think there's you were saying this is the only version of the video I've seen. You've seen a different version that shows the scoreboard. So, I mean, it's one of the things, anytime we watch a match where you can't see what the current state of the game is with the scoreboard, it is a little different, and you can't really say everything about the match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in this situation here, I think Zak's actually winning 2-1.
Okay.
And as he gets that kind of big lunge, I think it's a backhand there that pushes Fatty over the edge. I think that flips it to 3-1.
Okay.
So we might actually see that, So it rolls through. He comes forward here. Now, this punch here, boom. Yeah, that gets the score. Flips it to 3-1 to Zak. But nobody scores the head kick, but then he gets a minus point after that, which takes away that 3-1 that he just scored.
Yeah.
So it's back to close again.
Yeah, so it's in it still, and this just the last sequence with it's exactly what you'd want from the final of a major championships. A match that's there to be won in the dying seconds, and Fatty is showing a bit of character, and he's going for it here. And I mean, that's absolutely what you'd want to see from your fighter, isn't it? That the match is there to be won.
Definitely, he's so hard to stop as well. Once he gets that first like once he takes off here, boom, you see, it's almost impossible to stop him.
Yeah.
So he's putting himself in the right position to go and get scores. Fair play to him, and Zak's just trying to maybe hit back and make sure there's no advantage taken by Fatty and no clear scores. He's just trying to make everything almost nullified, I guess, there by just hitting back. But you can see that evolution of, as you said, that blitz technique. I think it comes like, so he leads, he switches, and he goes 1-2, and then he leads off the backhand here. So he goes 1 and then switches stance into the opposite side to the head. And we had a conversation about this already, and I think it comes from like a karate technique traditionally, where they lead off the backhand front leg, and as you switch your leg, you switch the hand and you go upstairs with it. And I think that has transitioned into like maybe point fighting and sport karate, as they call it. So I think that might have influenced that.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely fascinating, as we did like chat about this, that, this is, Fatih Demir coming out of Master Trickery's club, Tangun, and, that it's only 8 years later. I mean, the guys that are at the top now were definitely training at that time. They were in the club, they were training at that time, and Fatih threw the same shot in the European Championships against Ross in a semi-final. I mean, it's a hell of a shot, that big left hand as he goes in. And then at that point in time was something like, I don't really know, I haven't seen this before. So from a coach's perspective, it was a new thing, but it's kind of evolved. And I mean, when we were training with Master Trickery and Alameen and Colin and the rest of it at the summer camp there a few years ago in Ireland, we spent a good bit of time working on that, on a blitz, starting with the backhand to the body. And for most of us, that's like, oh, okay, that's different, that's new, we haven't usually been doing that before. And it really does seem like a natural evolution or continuation on that, even if, maybe its genesis isn't there, with that, and it goes back, as you say, to like traditional karate or to the early days of point fighting. It's still, being able to add it into the repertoire and make use of it there, I think is, it's pretty impressive. It's a nice shot.
Yeah, and what it does is it actually kind of like almost sets up your feet to sprint forward.
Yeah.
Because it's opposite hand, opposite leg. So it's kind of like a sprinter's motion.
Yes.
And obviously once Fatty gets that start on you, you're in big trouble. So for a guy like him with the size, and he's not really afraid of like a defensive side kick from Zak's point of view and things like that, he doesn't have any fear. He's able to just go straight forward into that space and take that shot. Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's something as well about because you're starting with that backhand, it squares up your shoulders. So you're going, if you were half facing or full, side facing, you then have now a better punching position because you've committed it. So your footwork, your reach with the backhand has now committed you. So you're going to be in a better position to follow with hands. So I think that's good as well,
Yeah, definitely. And that has been like the whole idea of the fight, really. Can you stop Fatty from building that momentum? And it's funny because it's traditionally it's Zak, the guy who's building momentum and putting you on the back foot. But he did well, and he picked his moments well to get his own bit of momentum as well. And he was able to adjust, and it shows the quality of him to be able to adjust on the fly and still pull the win. So
absolutely. So coming out of a fight like that, I've only had a couple of those heavyweight fighters come through my club over the years, a very, very limited number. But what would you take from that, in terms of techniques or ideas or tactics that are relevant to training the bigger fighters?
Yeah, like for me, when I was fighting in the heavyweights, I was never really the biggest guy. So momentum is actually one of those important things that I always tried not to give anybody. So I fought Fatty twice, and that was always the plan. Just never give him that kickstart momentum to even put you on the back foot, because once you get started, you're in trouble and you're only going to go backwards, and you're giving up space, you're giving up warnings and everything, and it's very hard to score on the back foot against a guy who's building so much momentum. So it's very important, and I think Zak actually made this adjustment really well to be able to extend the original distance to stop him coming in directly.
Yeah.
So being able to be a bit more side facing and use that front leg almost as a barrier to entry is quite important there, and I think Zak did it really well.
So yeah, it's the kind of thing where you know, when you look at something like how a bulletproof vest is described, it's like you've got this, you know, ballistic thing shooting at you really, really fast, and the idea is you don't try to stop it, you try to absorb it. And I mean, that's, you know, where you can't get out of the way, you're just going to absorb that force. So that, I think, is what Zak has kind of done pretty effectively on occasions in that fight, is soak up the distance, you know, by shortening his stance, by getting taller, by giving a little ground, and taking the sting out of it, so that, you know, Fatih can't get as much momentum. But it hasn't worked each time. You know, Fatih has got the distance right sometimes, and the shortening stance has actually probably in that case pushed Zak back, because you can't be solid off of a short stance. You know, you don't have the same stability. So, you know, it's a viable strategy, but not an infallible strategy. It's not always going to work all the time.
Yeah. But I think that one of the good things about it is he just kind of stopped that idea of him even push him around too much, even though Zak wasn't able to maybe get off his traditional kind of like flow of pushing people to the edge and building lots of pressure. He was able to kind of at times bring Fatih's pressure down and to switch the tide a little bit. So he was able to kind of absorb it, as you said, and then push back at times. So that was quite effective from him. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one of the things that you'd usually see from Zak, and that you can't really see in this, is the way he carries his hands and his front leg. So he'd tend to be able to stay tall, pushing forward with the hands, and then he can bring that left leg up on the open side more often than not. If he's fighting, you know, if it's left versus left, it's going to be open side. The turning kick can come up to the head, or the downward kick comes over the blind side shoulder. And it's the fact that it's all from that same body position, that shorter stance, the hands are coming in, and then there's this leg floating up and you don't know what side it's going to be on. And that makes him very, very dangerous and effective, because he can keep your head busy and he can keep your mind occupied with the hands coming forward, to where it's hard to read that kick. And like for me, I think as a little exercise that you can bring back into the club and start working even from the level of the kids, is those tapping drill exercises, getting used to the contact of the head and bringing the head kicks in. You know, and it becomes so much easier to read the person who has to change their body position and lean back in order to kick to the head. Where if you're able to keep your body tall and maintain your body position and do it in flow with the hands, it becomes twice as effective, twice as dangerous, you know?
Yeah, and I think the important thing there is the body position with the stance. I think if you can merge the two of them together, that's the key to punching correctly, because a lot of time people are either too side facing and they're getting trapped with the backhand and they can't get any traction or momentum. And then the second thing is the stance might be too long, so by the time they get into that range, the opportunity is gone. So the people who can actually merge the two of them well together seem to do really well, and Zak is one of those guys.
Yeah. So yeah, some nice lessons from both of the guys there for us, and a very entertaining fight to watch. So I suppose we'll put it out to people again over Instagram, Facebook, and so forth, just to see what fights or what kind of fights people would like to see broken down again. Maybe it's a specific competitor, maybe it's an event, or a style of match, or a particular technique they'd like to see in action. And so maybe we can look into something different for next Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one came from the Instagram. So we put out the question out to people what they want to see and any ideas, suggestions. So Zak actually came up twice, and this particular fight was mentioned once as well. So yeah, I think that was a good one. So keep your suggestions coming in. If you want to put them in the comments of this video as well, we'll see those. So feel free to do so. And make sure you like the video, because it really helps the video to get a bit of traction and to get out to more ITF faces and things like that. So be sure to do so. It really helps us out.
Brilliant. We'll catch you next Friday.
Brilliant.